What up, YouTube? It's Kurt here. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to beat the new Salamangreat deck. And it's a lot easier than I think a lot of people think. And the thing is, the deck is really good. It's really good at recycling. It's really good at saying no to a lot of plays that you're trying to do. And from what I gather, the deck really likes to go first so far. Because, yeah, it's mostly because of this bad boy. This is really integral to the deck. But there are some solutions. You'll probably see this deck a lot, so it's really good to side for this deck. And in this format, things are getting really interesting. But yeah, basically, so this is the card I think is most efficient to focus on. Your opponent is probably going to get this up on their first turn, and that's going to negate something that's hopefully really important to your strategy if your opponent knows what they're doing. If they know what they're doing, they're going to mess up your plays, and you're going to get a lot of rejection, and they're probably going to have a couple hand traps, one or two hand traps in their hand that you have to deal with. But fortunately, there are some things that really make it easy to play around this card. First off, I want to talk about Kaiju. All right, Kaiju is an excellent answer. The thing is with Roar the opponent has to have their Link monster on the field in order to activate Roar. If you Kaiju away their only Link monster, most of the times they only get one on their board, then they cannot activate Roar that turn. And that basically lets you open up your plays and lets you play your hand as you normally would, barring all the hand traps. Hand traps you still have to deal with, but a lot of times you can still play around them. All right, next, obviously in this tab, I'm pulling up Necro Valley. And this is key because I really feel like this could be a huge thing in the format. Necro Valley prevents, if you time it right and you are able to keep it from getting roared, if you get Necro Valley on the field, then your opponent cannot recycle their Salamangreat cards. And that's what is that's what makes the deck go. And the thing about Necro Valley is if you're already playing 2 terraforming in your deck, then Necro Valley is all the more feasible because you only really need to play 1 in your deck for it to be a meaningful side deck card for you. So you only need to play 1 Necro Valley and yeah, stick it in your side deck, and that'll help keep Salamangreats in check, because once you get that on the field, then they cannot recycle their cards, and that's just so disrupting to that strategy. And Necro Valley is also pretty good against Thunder Dragons, so it's not a bad idea there. Against Sky Striker, it's not tremendous, but it does keep the Kagari recycling from happening. So Necro Valley is a huge thing you might want to consider in your side deck. Also, Red Reboot. All right, in this format, Red Reboot might be better than it's ever been. Normally, your opponent can only have 1 Salamangreat Roar, and once they whip that out, if you have a Red Reboot in your hand, basically you're like, reset, you can't do that. Red Reboot, this is essential also if you're playing an OTK deck. If you're not playing an OTK deck, Red Reboot may not be the best option, but for me, a lot of decks are able to really get their plays off and use Red Reboot. So as long as you keep in mind that if you're flipping back down the Salamangreat Roar, and then play around that, you don't really have to activate anything if you have a good board, then Red Reboot is a really good option. Also, you will probably, even though Ultrageist got owned in the last YCS, you'll probably still see them floating around because they're still a really popular option, and people still are trying to get that top placement with the Pot of Indulgence. All right, so those are the main things to talk about. Obviously, a lot of decks run back row destruction, so a lot of people are starting to main Twin Twisters, and if you main Twin Twisters, that'll make your opponent essentially activate their Roar early. Because if you use it's also going up in price. This was only like $3 a couple months ago. It's in this format where back row is becoming more important. Twin Twisters is becoming a lot better. So yeah, if you I would recommend maining Twin Twisters in this format, to be honest, and then being able to side out if your opponent's playing like Thunder, Danger Thunder Dragons. Then Twin Twisters, it's a great main deck option and a great side deck option, and also really, really helpful against the Salamangreat option. And of course, the more budget version is Mystical Space Typhoon, which is also really helpful because a lot of times you know where your opponent is going to play that roar. And we also, at the last couple of major tournaments, I forget which the most recent one is, but Mystical Space Typhoon made an impact. All right, so that is the top way, in my opinion, to beat the Salamangreat strategy, especially if you're going second. A lot of these are really good going second options, and normally Salamangreat doesn't have a lot of the tools to OTK, but it can if it gets its one fusion monster on the field, and that is one thing to keep in mind. Normally, yeah, it's a really consistent, really regenerative strategy, and you want to find a way to disrupt that. Probably the number one way, Necro Valley. Let me know what you guys think. If you like this video, subscribe and all that stuff. But this is Kurt. Peace out. Appreciate it.